in chat, or if anyone is feeling particularly moved, you can feel free to introduce yourself as a member of the council on mic. I'll do that because I'm unmuted. Hi, Susanna Davis, representing Office of Racial Equity, and I am a co-chair of this council. All of the members note your presence either on mic or in chat. Give you a couple minutes to do that. While you're doing that, I'm going to tell you a joke I recently heard. Where do fish keep their money? In the riverbank.
Thank you. That's a good one.
All right.
I think,
go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. I was
Yeah,
just
I
going
was
to say,
just
I think
gonna.
we can dive into it because people will continue to type their intros in chat as we go.
Mhm.
But Miles, if you want to spin up the presentation.
Great. So these are the agenda items that we have planned for today. I know the first thing on the docket is the approval of minutes for a couple of our past sessions, and then I'll hand it over to the co-chairs for any legislative updates that they would like to share. And then from there, we will hand it over to Josh Blumberg from AOE for a presentation on the AI guidance for educators that they recently released. And then contingent on timing from there, I have a couple of updates and discussion points that I would like to share. But I think that'll just be dependent on how much time we spend on talking about AI guidance for educators.
Miles, do you want to drop a link to the minutes in the chat, or I can? Actually, I have them.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to pull them up now. I should have done that before the meeting.
Got it. It's the last two in that table. So I would like to motion that we accept the minutes for November 7th.
I second.
Great, thanks. Motion by Josiah, second by Ron, and Phil. And any discussion, edits, modifications? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Please say or signify aye.
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 Great. Any opposed, please say nay or signify otherwise. Any abstentions, please say abstain. All right. November minutes are approved. Thank you all. And we are out to December 5th meeting minutes.
I motion we accept those minutes.
Second.
All right. Josiah moves, Phil and Amanda second. Any discussion, edits? All right. All in favor, please say aye or otherwise signify.
Aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay or otherwise signify. Any abstentions, please say abstain. All right. All pending minutes approved. Thanks, everyone. All right, legislative updates. A lot is happening in the State House, and I'm gonna lean heavy on Josiah because he's watching this space a lot more closely. I know that he and I did get an opportunity to pop in recently to House Gov Ops as they were considering the synthetic media in elections bill. And it was a fascinating exploration of the wide chasm between the Senate version and the House version of the bills. And so I think they were looking to resolve some of that and really understand what is the intended scope, because it seemed like it had been broadened to go beyond the politicians and elected elections focus that had originally been proposed. That was just a quick observation, but I'll invite Josiah to help me fill in blanks.
Yeah, thank you, Susanna. I think what stood out to me from the conversation is they were really working hard on the disclosure piece of it and like how to say robots were used to create this, whatever. And it may or may not be real. So we provided afterwards the disclosure language that we use across the executive branch here that the council put together and approved. And the chair appreciated that. So far, we haven't been asked to come back and provide additional feedback. The next step for that bill was to go to committee of conference, but we also provided a link to the New Jersey statute, which we have discussed here before, which is kind of a broader look at deep fakes and synthetic media overall, that I think the council had liked. So we provided that as a just something for them to consider. They were looking at potentially making that a separate bill, but just appreciated the feedback, and there was just a wide variety of comfort and confidence in the legislature's ability to create laws around AI, and meaningfully steer the use of AI in the creation of synthetic media around elections. So anyway, it was a good discussion. We are tracking a few other AI and data related bills. Nothing really seems to be that far along yet. It's a lot of early stage short form stuff or things that we discussed last year that are just kind of getting picked up again. Big focus is on some of the other topics facing legislature this year. So, but if any of you are tracking any particular bills that you think should be on our radar, we're happy to add those to the list of ones we're keeping an eye on. All right. Susanna, I think we can move to the next topic.
Let's kick off this discussion with AOE and hear a little bit about the AI guidance that's been issued for educators. Josh, I'll send it to you if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share a window. Let me see if it's comes over okay.
Yep, we can see it.
All right, give me 1 second to get my view back. Okay, I think it should be all right. Let me know if you can't hear or see something. So we released our AI guidance recently. It's a pretty long document, so I'm going to give you the 10,000-foot view of it. The part of the vision in AOE is to make sure we give students solid roots and foundations in terms of content knowledge and a base, but also give them wings so that they can pursue their dreams. And so from an AI guidance standpoint, we really wanted to interweave a concept throughout this entire guidance of how foundational literacy is important to success with AI. You can't be AI literate without knowing your topic and content areas. So you can use AI and produce something that seems okay and actually really impressive for what you don't necessarily know a lot about But if you know it deeply, you can go much farther with it. And so that's a theme that interweaves through here. There's a lot of risks and ethical concerns about AI, and I'll go into them later. I got the good advice early on. Start the guidance with the positives. Worry about the risks later. But I really think there's kind of a middle path here, right? If we don't introduce AI to students, they're going to leave us being unprepared as graduates for the world they enter. There's going to be equity gaps that some students will learn to use this AI effectively and use it in their learning, and other students will figure it out and not use it effectively in their learning, and it will end up bypassing the learning process. And if we don't give teachers and schools good AI tools with solid data privacy agreements with the vendors and where we have control, we can really violate students' data privacy. So hiding our head in the sand around AI is not an approach that's going to work. The first risk in the guidance is the risk of doing nothing, because I really wanted to call out that doing nothing is a choice, and it has implications, many of which are negative. The other thing the guidance does is it presents a kind of a view of when is it developmentally appropriate for students to begin to use AI. And this is going to shape over time. It's inevitable 5 years from now, we'll look back and we'll probably tweak this. And we're encouraging schools to actively discuss, is this right for them? It's just guidance, but it's a good starting spot to say K2, there's really no business for students using AI and any chatbots in any case. In grade 3 through 5, you'd only see it if it's super structured by the teacher, but most of it is really AI awareness at that point. Maybe the teacher wants to generate some images with the AI ahead of time, and then they can talk about media literacy. How do you know if what you're reading here is true? How would you go and learn that? What biases and stereotypes are in what the AI created? So it would be the teacher making students aware of AI and where it shows up in their world. As we go into middle school, it's a much more of a walled garden approach, right? Can we bring in AI tutoring applications, right? Things that are very specific, or educational scenarios where the teacher is using the AI as an activity in the lesson, but it's not an open-ended AI where the students are using it as freeform, right? And then as we go into high school, we really do want to shift into that more open-ended use, because we want them to know how to use it. And all of this goes with AI literacy, because they need to be able to learn how to use AI to help their learning, and separately, how to use AI to get something done. And they're not actually the same thing, right? And so to contrast those. So the benefits of AI in education.
Can I ask a
Oh
question
yeah,
about
please do.
yeah, this is John Cohn. I- all good. I'm just curious about in high school, what about teaching those who are interested how to make AI, how to
Yes.
write code with stuff. And I think there's an incredible opportunity here in the state to do that, armed with all the appropriateness and guardrails and stuff.
There is. I don't know if Miles will get into it towards the end, but I mean, it's really been transformational, even in the past few months, of how much stronger the AI coding models have gotten, and the agent potential. So when we get, let me hit this when I get to the AI literacy part. So I'll come back to it. So the kind of four uses, I put these kind of in the order that I think schools or teachers should be exposed to them. I think one of the good entry points for a teacher who's new to AI is using it to streamline admin and planning work, right? You get the time, if you're using it to help you plan your lesson plans, maybe you want to align it with the curricular standards and you want to make sure things are backward designed to them. You're using the AI to help. You have time to review that. You're clearly in the loop, right? There's no student data. It's nice and simple. There's other things that would fit under that would use student data, but it's still stuff where you have a lot of review. And then the next use cases are a lot of like personalizing learning, right? There's a lot of amazing accessibility potential for AI to help people interact with the content in different ways. There's tutoring solutions, right? Um, and then as we move past that, we get to AI literacy. And I'll explain a bit more in later slides, but we really want to develop students' ability to understand, evaluate, and ethically use these tools. And then finally, we want to shift into, now that you have that foundation, using it as a tool to build stuff. And so the principle one, right, you can use it as a planning partner, aligning standards. You could also be using it to refine tone in newsletters, right? But there's opportunities with student data, right? If you're recording your class, now you have a transcription of your class. You can automatically generate notes. There's students in the class who need those notes, maybe for an accessibility need, but everyone benefits from that. How does that change the nature of your class? You can even use that for teaching development. You can say, oh, here's this transcript of how my class went. How much did I call on an even balance of kids during the class period? How much was I speaking, or was I having the students speak and work in groups, right? And you can use that to analyze your own teaching. We can also use it for data analysis, right? And we have some school districts who are already putting their data into some very secure AI systems to use it to identify and group students and target interventions to their needs. So that can be really helpful. So principle two, we're getting to personalization, right? There's a lot of accessibility stuff. This could be translation, but this can also be, if I'm speaking, it's very easy to have live closed captioning on the screen for someone who's hard of hearing, right? There's a lot of accessibility features that come with AI systems. You can use it for tutoring, right? And the tutoring potential is great, particularly when they're built on top of the curricular elements. So you want the tutoring system to have access to the actual curriculum you're delivering. So it's using the same jargon, it's targeting the same learning outcomes. It's built as a tutor, not as an assistant, which is actually a very different need, right? So ChatGPT is not really built for that. So we need to think about which systems are doing that well, and potential for automated feedback. Feedback's very powerful in education, but it can take time for teachers to grade a lot of papers and turn it around. With that AI, they can give that instant feedback and then follow up when they have time. And we'll get into a little bit of that later. The AI literacy, which we were discussing earlier, understanding AI, this really comes down to some computer science fundamentals, some data science fundamentals, and that is a place where, as a state, we need to build up, right? To say, are we educating our students well at those things? Evaluating AI is rooted concretely in the disciplines. And this is something I really wanted to emphasize in the AI guidance, is to not separate it. So if you are teaching a social studies course and the student is trying to understand the cause of World War II, if they simply ask AI, what was the cause of World War II? It'll give a plausible answer. It'll be decent, right? But for a student who's done the reading, who's asking critical questions, who's diving deeply, they're going to get way more out of that experience. So evaluation of the AI output and the use of AI really needs to be built on that disciplinary knowledge and connected there. And then using AI obviously builds on that same skill set of disciplinary knowledge, but there's a lot of curiosity and entrepreneurship that goes with the possibilities here, and that creative problem solving. So the final principle is, if you can get students that foundation, you can free up yourself to having them use it for collaborative problem solving and creation. But you can also use it in some other ways. So I want to point that out. You can have it be a Socratic partner where it's challenging students' reasoning and diving deep into the debate. It could be a role reversal where, let's say it's a science concept, students got to teach the AI the science concept and it's asking probing questions, right? And sometimes the way we learn best is by teaching. It could be a simulation, right? Debating historical figures always makes me a little nervous, because if you don't give the AI the right context, it's going to make up based on stereotypes, right? So that is one I'd call out. But negotiating scenarios, it can play one role, the student plays another one, and go back and forth. What was interesting with these slides, I was playing with Notebook LM has a new slideshow generator, so I'm playing with that. I'm going to stop there before I rush forward. That's the kind of use cases, and just see if I answer questions at this point before I get into kind of the risks of AI and what to deal with that. Okay.
I think these
One
four
quick question.
principles. Oh, go, John.
Yeah. I liked that last bit. Is there any changes and suggestions in curriculum, like for computer science courses? I know that not many high schools have computer science, but are we going to have any sort of standards-based technology learning, or would we leave it up? I mean, it's hard to keep track once you get
Yeah.
curriculum that's out of date, but I was just kind of curious if we're going to try to be more prescriptive or not. And I could see advantages and disadvantages both ways.
Um, as a state, we don't currently have computer science standards adopted.
Right.
And so I think it's a interesting spot to dive into, and it's something that I want to work on and help the state forward, and we'll see where we go with it. But in
Yeah,
terms of
that's good.
yeah,
Awesome. Thank you.
As I'm looking at these four principles, and I know you get to like um academic dishonesty later, but have you got any, like, not thinking about academic dishonesty, but more about just um any patterns that you've developed for helping teachers to guide students through using the tools in ways that don't shortcut learning, right? Like that's
yes,
one thing that, like, there's certain things I don't have to know how to do at this point because the robots will do it for me most days, right? Till the day the robots don't do it well, for whatever reason. And so that's just a piece where it seems like it could become much harder to evaluate whether students actually understand a thing or understand how to use the tools. And I know you've talked about that in the lower grade levels as foundational literacy in the domain areas, but just, there's a lot of skills you develop in upper grades, and I'm interested in hearing about how you're approaching that and patterns for that.
yeah. So the guidance actually dives deep into the concept of cognitive offloading, right? And cognitive offloading, when we're using any tech tool, we are having it do a thinking task for us in some ways. And everything's cognitive offloading in the sense that, like Socrates, you can find writings of his where, or he didn't write anything, but things about him where he was talking about the danger of books. And if people write everything down in books, their memory is not going to be as good as it used to be. And he was right. Our memory isn't as good. They used to memorize whole books, right? We can't do that anymore. But we've chosen that that was something worth cognitively offloading. So I don't want to say all cognitive offloading is bad, but it's a choice of when you do it, right? We don't want a second grader to be using a calculator when they're learning multiplication. They need to learn their multiplication tables. You don't want to short circuit that learning process, right? And so the real key is teachers know a lot about learning objectives and backward design to learning objectives. Curriculum design is a strong suit. So really being clear on what are the learning objectives for this activity and lesson? What do you want the students to get out of it? And then you backward design to how is AI supporting that learning objective, or is it getting in the way of it, right? That's really what the teachers need to mentally do in that process. So they may, the more what the AI is doing is aligned with that learning objective, the more they're going to need something that is a feedback system, a tutoring system, a highly structured AI, right? The more it's aligned, but not the same, right? Let's say I was teaching my students how to graphic design and how to work with a customer, right? And they're building a website. But the lesson plan is, like, my learning objective is not for them to master HTML, not for them to learn CSS. Well, I could have the AI do the web building in that case, right? Because that's not what was the learning objective. But if it was a class on web development, I don't want that, right? And so being really conscious of that is important. And that's very tied to the academic honesty side of things, right? They kind of go hand in hand. So in the academic honesty, it is focusing a bit more on process over product. And this is just good learning practice, right? So if you're going to have writing's a process. So if you have students write a first draft, they come to class the next day and you conference with the students and you take 5 minutes with each student to sit down with them and talk about their first draft and where they're taking their second draft, right? The fact that that a couple of them used AI at home and don't actually understand what they wrote, it's going to come out, right? If you what you want to do is make that process part of your assessment and not only assess the final product. And there's some techniques for doing this. There isn't a perfect magic bullet for the academic honesty side of things. We moved away from big high stakes testing in classes where you'd have a big final exam and midterm exams and structured exams at the end of each unit. And we said, oh, do a take home essay. It's so much better, right? And so we are going to have to move some assessment back into the classroom settings. Um, Data privacy comes down to vetted secure systems. One thing I do like to dispel a little, I think a lot of what we're doing for data privacy for educational technology tools already is the right things to be doing with AI. They're not fundamentally different in a lot of ways because a lot of those ed tech tools that people are using, the AI is getting built into those tools. It's getting built into, what they use every day. So an example of that would be Google Gemini is now available. Most of our schools are all Google. Google Translate's available. Google Translate is not covered by the data privacy agreement that they sign, the educational one. It's a consumer product. Gemini is. So if you wanted to translate something with student data, Google Translate is not okay to use, and Gemini kind of is because it's covered by that agreement. So there's like, just the fact that it's AI doesn't make it unique. Um, so, bias and fairness, we go into that in terms of the how these systems are built. They don't, right? If it reads fiction, if it's reading the transcripts of a movie that have been edited, sent into it, at this point, they put in all the YouTube videos to train in pre-training processes for the foundational models. It doesn't know the difference between that and a science article, right? That concept of truth is something that we can put on, but the generative AI systems, that's not really in their makeup. So well-being and safety, there's just a lot of potential for deep fakes to be created and, non-consensual intimate images, that's what NCII stands for, to get posted online and bullying and harassment using AI. And that's something for school districts to update their policies and procedures to make sure a lot of the guidance on policy and procedures is reviewing your existing policies and procedures and making sure they handle these scenarios with advice on how to edit them. The mental health side, I think, is only growing, right? It's so tempting for students who may be not feeling comfortable to talk to an adult, even though it's not private. We don't see it as private. It feels private to the student for them to talk to ChatGPT about their problems and use it as a mental health counseling solution. Probably not the best one, but there are also students who just are too isolated and aren't making friends, and they're using it for that simulated empathy, and that can be a real danger in and of itself. So I think it's something for the schools to be aware of, and it's something we're starting to see schools dealing with. Um, the equitable access, right? It's the same with a lot of our stuff. If we don't teach AI literacy to our students, some of them are gonna pick it up from their families and they're gonna learn good practices, and some are not, and it's not an equitable situation. I do cover ethical. This is where Notebook LM is interesting. It changed it to ethical usage. Um, but I would say more around the ethics of AI. I think there's a lot of concern amongst teachers and students about the ethics of the AI companies and whether it's consolidating power, whether it is potentially leading to job displacement or environmental impacts. Um, or intellectual property concerns about whether people are being compensated for their intellectual property and how these models were trained. So I think as schools, we need to lean into that. For the teachers who are concerned, using that as a topic for discussion to explore is really healthy. So that the AI guidance doesn't deal with it extensively, but from that perspective, it does. Let me see what my next. Okay, so I did have one, Josiah, just specifically on cognitive offloading, a slide, because I think it is a new thing for a lot of people to think about, right? And it is something that is just really salient in the educational setting. I noticed it myself. I spent a lot of time doing software development with AI, and I used whole programming languages that I never learned, right? Which felt very weird to me. But I had to make that conscious decision. Okay, what is my purpose here? Am I trying to teach myself the language, or I'm trying to get this thing done? But for our students, they're trying to learn, right? The products they make, we call those the artifacts of education, because the real product is our learning. And then after going through kind of those risks and mitigations, the guidance goes into some implementation strategies. It provides a needs assessment where schools can really look at, like, where are we at as a district, and where should we be focusing our energy? Which policies should we review? What have we done in terms of staff readiness, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of making communities aware? There's some resources for caretakers and parents and guardians in the guidance. And so I think it can be an advantage to have some of your teachers be leading the edge, and some teachers being like, I need a little more time to get comfortable with this. When you all figure it out, come find me. Right? Like, use that as an advantage, because that's the reality that you're always going to have. So can we make that an advantage? And some of the same with student usage, right? Let's get some experience. Let's do some pilots, and then let's share that with each other. The key thing is get teachers talking to each other about how they are using the tools. That's all I got. I was trying to do a
do you
short
think that,
presentation.
can I ask a question?
Yeah, sorry, Philip.
No. I'm sorry. I jumped right in there and I didn't raise my hand. Do you think that this is going to exacerbate the digital divide? And if so, are you thinking through how to ameliorate that issue or those issues?
Well, during COVID, we got to a point where we pretty much had one-to-one computing for every single student in the whole state. It's usually a Chromebook, but that's available. That's the most common situation. But there is a device available for every single student past a certain grade level in almost every district in the state at this point. So within the schools, I don't think we really have that digital divide. Now, in terms of home use, that's a different story. And I think a lot of our schools are less reliant on homework at the younger grades because of that. And so I think there's a lot of conscientiousness around that. There are still some districts that are sending some devices so that those Chromebooks can be used from home and connect to wireless for internet access if that's not available. But I think if that's the side of the digital divide you're getting at, I think the schools are pretty conscious of that. Yeah. Is it Macon? Someone else had their hand raised. Is that Macon or not? I may be pronouncing your name wrong.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. It's Macon, just like bacon. So easy to remember that way. Great presentation. I just had a question more about kind of what we're putting our high school students into in terms of job opportunities and what the job market looks like, future of work and all of that, and just sort of how it intersects as we think about vocational schools and sort of new models of learning. I'm really interested in the classroom implications, and I think you gave a great overview there, but I'm just curious, like, how the AI is so disruptive for the workforce generally, what that means for how we're trying to equip seniors as they're graduating with skills, and if there's been sort of thought about job skills around that.
I think there has. I don't think maybe quite as statewide, but there's
Yeah.
been a lot of effort around career and technical education, and we have some really strong career and technical education centers. And it's been an active discussion in terms of education reform and what's coming with Act 73 of
Yeah.
how do we position CTE. And I think there's a lot of potential there. It's incredible some of the programs that have been built, and for many students and many students who would go to college too, it's really helpful for them to see that applicable form, right, of education where they can see it applied. And often it's that applied knowledge where, it's not always seen. So one interesting thing we've been talking about is data science, right? And data science to me is like applied math. It's applied statistics, right, in the real world. And so where for students that sometimes that connection is really important. Um, yeah, I think equipping our students so that they can go in the directions they want is our goal, right? And so they need enough foundational knowledge that they can keep teaching themselves new skills because um, it's going to change, right? They're going into a more unsettled world where they may change jobs more often than we change jobs. And having that good solid foundation will allow them to retool themselves.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing just to, and I can paste the link for the AI guidance while we're wrapping up, but happy to answer other questions.
Josh, one other question I have is, what do you see as the approach to keeping this evergreen? Are you planning like an annual review of it, or how are you thinking about approaching that?
So we purposely labeled it version 1.0 because that is exact fact. Um, I think I don't think we'd update it forever though, because I have a feeling it's going to move on. Like to me, the interesting thing is all the professional learning and the collaborations and the implementation teams in districts. Like that's the really exciting work. The document itself it's a document, right? It's what do people do with it? And so like I'm looking forward to helping districts and kind of a professional learning plan over the next 18 months. So I think we'll keep updating the document, but I could imagine some more targeted things in different spaces. Yeah, John.
I'm very interested in the last two questions and your responses. I really like your responses. I think one of the things in terms of making it evergreen, we have to understand that we're going to be advancing slower than the technology just because of the nature. And so I think that I don't like that word, enabling the students and the teachers to recognize that and build the meta skills of um, experimentation, confidence, a certain amount of doubt, but enabling them to go in and learn these new things on their own rather than having them be taught, because any curriculum is going to be out of date by the time it's approved. So I think those meta skills of some sort of digital fearlessness and digital, built-in caution, appropriate caution, those are probably the most important things we can teach, because the technical management of this stuff, they're going to have to, fend for themselves a bit because it's evolving so quickly. So I'm not exactly sure how we put curriculum around um, digital resilience, or, I don't know what the word is, but I think there's a real opportunity to teach kids not to be fearful and to be cautiously bold.
When I worked at Champlain College, the uh, the one division that had all the graphic design and game design and whatnot, they insisted that you could teach creativity. and it took them a while to convince the rest of us that you can indeed teach creativity. It is something you can practice and develop as a skill, right? And there's a process that goes with it. And I think that, as well as entrepreneurship, we've seen entrepreneurship rates increase with AI. I saw some report recently on that, and it struck me as really telling. Um, you know, it it's very um, amplifying, right? Like AI technology. It lets us amplify our goals, but like what are our goals? Like what are our dreams? What do we want to use it for? Right. And that's something that, we need to help and empower students with. So I'm with you, John, and that's why I wanted to make sure that high school side has some of that open-endedness because I don't
Yeah.
want people to leave and graduate high school and not had that experience of wait, I can do more. I don't have to be held back. I can take a project that I'm dreaming about and really pursue it.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, because I think creativity and entrepreneurship are both, involved, sort of self-confidently, cautiously, but self-confidently moving forward. And I think that is exactly the same skill here. And I think we need to lead, as teachers and stuff with that same sort of cautious optimism, because I think if we have a fearful stance, not that we should be unaware of the real risks. But if we go into that saying, this is something careful, don't get any on you, like radioactivity, then the students are going to enter the workforce and hold themselves back and be at disadvantage, I think. But
Yep.
I'm glad it sounds like you're thinking about it in a really nice way.
Josh?
Yeah, Miles?
Yeah. Hi, Josh. And thank you again for running through this material. I thought this was really informative, and I enjoyed reading the document that you put together as well. I do have one question that I think is a little bit beyond the scope of this guidance, but for context, I have a 3-year-old at home. And again, I know the primary focus of this is not on early childhood pedagogy, but I'm one of the things that I've thought about a lot is the proliferation of AI generated media. So, things like shows on YouTube Kids and AI embedded toys, which are targeted explicitly towards children in that really early age gap. So, between like pre-K and grade 2, where I do think rightfully recognizes that's not necessarily a great time to be teaching kids about artificial intelligence and even AI awareness because it's too conceptually challenging for them. But as this type of technology targeted towards young children proliferates, I'm wondering if there's a risk that disparities in early exposure and parental mediation for AI technology could create an AI literacy gap, or rather, I guess, an equity gap in AI literacy that begins at home before it's even necessarily appropriate to begin formal AI awareness training in school. And I know schools can't solve every problem, but I'm just wondering if this is something that you or other folks at AOE have thought about, or if you have any research or educators who specialize in early education who you're aware of who are considering this.
Well, the guidance does mention like AI empowered toys because I think we're going to see really young kids using these things. And to me, it's not an AI literacy concern. It's that they're they view it as a anthropomorphized person, right? Like
Right.
that talking bunny is real to them and is their friend and is always there for them. And it's a strange relationship. And I think there can be some really unhealthy stuff from that. And parents need to be aware of that. And I think principals need to be aware just to navigate those situations when they come up. The so there's a bit in there. It's so new. It's like hard to totally know how to handle. But I think providing parents with resources, I think of it more as a mental health concern.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I try not to anthropomorphize AI in the guidance. I always find it interesting how people talk about how they work with AI. And we talk about collaborating with AI, but that's kind of as far as I wanted to go. Yeah, I think it'll be wild. Like parents are so busy, and for them to be, not just hand a kid an iPad to play with, but hand something that is their friend. That's a strange thing. And I think it's interesting. You can look online and find, particularly in China, the toys became popular, and it's interesting hearing parents talk about the toys, both negatively also in terms of how attached students get to how attached little kids get to them. So it'll be interesting as that technology rolls out, but I think we just need to keep our eyes open.
Well, thank you very much, Josh. This was really great and nice work on the guidance, and all the other folks who had a hand in it. Please pass along that. It's really well done.
Thanks.
Miles, I think there's probably not time to dive into the other larger topics we had today, but I can just preview that one of the things we're thinking about is we want to use AI more deeply in our software development toolchain, as Josh already discussed, actually, that he had done personally. And one of the things that we are trying to think through is when it becomes so easy to generate large amounts of code. In IT, we have this distinction between the concept of something is done and it's done, right? And done means like somebody can actually go use it and it's real life code in production and it works. And done is that the developer finished what they thought it took to get it to done, and now it's done. So there's a difference between done and done. And normally that's like this big of a gap. But when we use AI to get to done, now the gap to done is actually a little bit bigger. And so we're trying to figure out what are the patterns between done and done. What are the things we need to do in that space to take AI generated code and move it to production? And we're looking at just internal facing tools right now, kind of the approach we've taken all throughout our AI journey. So low risk profile, internal facing tools, trying to just find out what's the current state of the art, what are the tools capable of, and what can we build. So I guess I'll say that that's like our probably our core topic for next month. Keep an eye on the agenda in case there's something emergent that changes, but we'll want to dive into that with you all, and we'll share what we've learned from our pilot efforts between now and then. But really, we'll be looking to the council for some guidance on what should we have in between done and done, or dev complete and stuff is ready for production. We'll share our theories and we'll want input from you all. Oh yes, done. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. Done means done plus a security review. So that's a very good point. I do usually include the security review in done, but hopefully we do that before we get to production. All right. Susanna, do you want to go to public comment now?
Yeah, let's do that. So anybody here who is not a member of the council who would like to address the council, please feel free to do so now. You can either unmute yourself and speak your piece, or if you'd like, you can put your comments in chat. We are monitoring the chat. Rose.
Hey everyone. So I just wanted to give an update that we at AOT ran our first pilot workshop for like educating the workforce this week, which went really well. We're doing our second set on the 25th. So just wanted to throw that out there that we are starting to do some of that AI readiness with the workforce, and I'm super excited for us to officially roll it out to like general audience across the agency. So just wanted to put that out there as a general update from Agency of Transportation.
Thank you. Any feedback on the curriculum so far?
Yeah, I think feedback so far, I didn't plan enough time for the interactive scenarios that I had. So it's all focused on ChatGPT. And so I essentially have three different like data formats that we'd be working with. One of which is like a series of construction specifications. One's more tabular data that then is put into a PDF form for ChatGPT. And then the third is a image of a process map. And so everyone didn't get to do all three activities. My goal is to plan it that everyone could do each one so that they can really experience what AI is good at and what it is not good at. So I think having that in all of the exercises of like some successful thing, like prompts that are always going to work and some prompts that are never going to work. It's, I think, giving people the hands-on experience to be able to make some of those judgments of this is the right type of work to use AI for, and maybe this other type of work, especially with tabular data, is just not there to really do hardcore data analysis, at least through ChatGPT. So the feedback overall really good. I think people really enjoyed some of the discussion that I didn't have planned as part of the curriculum, specifically around like environmental impacts and like how much energy or like water is consumed with like each prompt, which Google put out a really good paper last year in 2025, I think August timeframe, on how many drops of water each prompt uses about in each different model. And I think people were really interested in that. And so I think some of the ethical considerations, which I didn't put a whole lot in the curriculum. So I want to build that out a little bit more. So.
Thank you.
Helpful insight. Anybody else who would like to offer comments to the council? Yes, Macon.
Yeah, hi, I'll just be brief. I wanted to introduce myself. I put my email address in the chat and really, again, appreciated the education overview. I'm getting more involved with the Harwood Supervisor Union here, so really excited to see what they're up to. My background is in a lot of government tech. I worked for the Obama administration and have some background with kind of the intersection of public services and technology and delivering those more at the national level, and moved back to Vermont during the pandemic and have been sort of hunkered down in the Valley, but I'm really eager to get more involved in state level projects, and can't help but note, as I'm sure many of you saw, and I've been working in government before, so I know it's probably tough to see, but the Vermont Digger article today about child welfare. And I guess my question for the group or just public comment is, AI represents, I think we can all agree, some profoundly exciting possibilities for asymmetric approaches to delivery and technology to sort of rapidly do things. And I think the Digger article that really got at the child social services program that's been struggling and other things underscores the consequence of those IT failures. And I know those too. And so I'm curious how well you feel the AI initiative and what it could offer is connected to these pants on fire issues with the existing technology infrastructure of the state. Because as someone who was more or less involved with healthcare.gov, there's nothing like a crisis to really drive a lot of innovation. And it seems like everywhere you look right now, there's some challenges. So curious on how AI has been seen as a practical application to some of these urgent issues. But otherwise, I'm really, really excited to be aware of this group and to be here in Waterbury and to get to know all of you more in depth. Thanks.
Thank you, Macon, and love to chat more next week. I think, as you heard today, we're pretty excited about the possibilities of using AI to deliver tech more effectively, and high risk systems are not the first place we're going to do it, right? So I think long term, yes, we intend to use AI to make our tech delivery more effective, and we are, certainly engaged in the projects like the one that you mentioned. I
We
see
also,
Albert has a question. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say the same thing. One of our peers in the state's attorneys and sheriff's department has asked what resources are available for state of Vermont organizations to further their understanding of the various AI systems, related pitfalls, and proper use.
Yeah, I'd say a couple of places to start. One is the AI page on the ADS website. We have our code of ethics and guidelines for employee use there, which I think are good background. But then the other thing is, anybody in the executive branch can feel free to reach out to me and Miles. I think Miles is probably the best bet for the particular question you asked, Albert. But yeah, feel free to reach out to us and have a conversation about the specific tools and how we can support you. And yeah, Miles has just dropped in about the learning management system. You want to speak to that, Miles?
Yeah, absolutely. So in coordination with the Center for Achievement in Public Service at DHR, we also recently released a course called Navigating Artificial Intelligence at the State of Vermont. This is intended for a general state government audience, and it covers a few of the items that you mentioned, namely a little bit of information on what types of AI systems are available for internal use, and then a good deal of detail on the guidance for using AI systems within the state government, as well as an overview of our artificial intelligence code of ethics. So I would definitely recommend that module. We did very recently release it just last week, so we're still actively collecting feedback and may make minor modifications to the course content moving forward. But that is available for all state government employees to take. So, and again, happy to discuss further as well if you have any additional questions.
All right. And Rose has also included an email address for anybody who's interested in learning more about AOT's activities. I see I see Macon with a hand and also Chris Curtis. And I want to acknowledge that we're close. Okay, Macon, I see you. Surprising face and head shake. So we're going to take that as a non-hand. Okay, Christopher.
Hey everybody, Chris Curtis at the Attorney General's office here. Just curious to know if there's been any discussion within ADS or any state agencies about the potential risks or consequences of developing AI systems and tools among state government programs or state government generally, to the extent that we are certainly already aware that there have been certain demands made of the state of Vermont by our partners in the federal government for access to information. So I'm curious to know if there is concern regarding the possibility that vulnerable persons or populations could potentially have their personal data, information, and or use or access of certain government programs, or their family structures that may be implicated by state government and their contact with state government at some point at risk of or threatened by use or inquiry of the federal government for any number of potential purposes. And that may be true today, it may be true 30 years from now. And it's not specific to any one particular administration, but it's just a question. I could imagine lots of states having lots of questions about, my goodness, we developed and deployed AI tools that can quickly and effectively search, detail, extrapolate any number of conclusions about our citizens or our safety net users, and now the federal government has potentially gained access to that and is using it for its own purposes. So I just wonder if there's been thought or consideration of, once you develop a tool and you deploy it, it may not always be used with the intent that you developed for it. Somebody else may have a very different view of how that could be accessed or used.
Sure. That's a good question, and I'm happy to have a more detailed discussion offline because we're at time, but just give a high level, yes, that's part of our review process. Uh, both like on the AI side, yeah, but throughout the ADS procurement and intake process, that's something that we think about is side effects of creating capabilities. But yeah, happy to follow up with you offline in more detail about any specific items you have in mind. Thanks, Chris.
All right. This was a full one. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you to our guests for their presentations and questions and other feedback. Next time, we will talk about some of those agenda items we didn't get to, um, like the IT paradigms and impact on development, that sort of thing, and talk more about the rollout for state employees. Um, until then, is there anything that has not been said that must be said before we close? All right, then you wild kids, get out of here. Do we need to do motions to adjourn, or can we just have a weekend in
Probably.
peace?
I'll
Okay.
motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Josiah.
Second,
All right. All in favor, hit the red button.
I
Aye. Thanks all.
have a good month.
Bye.